record this? Do you know?
I'm already recording.
Oh, you are?
I just hit it.
Okay.
Perfect.
I always try to surprise Ken in the middle of a sentence, and
Yeah.
I like it.
I caught him with his hair down once, but he wouldn't let me put it in.
Yeah, Garrett, you were trying to get yours in a ponytail, right?
I can do a ponytail now.
We were comparing.
Yeah.
Nice.
So who wants to explain the premise of what we're doing today?
This is the most ambitious crossover episode since Ender's Game, basically. Not Ender's Game. Ender's Game. What's the End Game? End Game since
That's
End
it.
Game.
That's it.
The Marvel thing. All right, let's start this over. Cut.
Okay.
This is a crossover episode. We got Isaac from Blind Island here, and then Ken and Garrett from Deep Grooves. And yeah, Isaac, like, he started commenting on our videos, and I started checking out his channel, and I was like, we should do a crossover episode. And then I found out you guys, like, I just told Ken that we had some guy who was like, had his own blog going, and that we should.
I had no idea.
Communicate. He didn't know that it was you, and then I told him who you were. He's like, oh, I love that guy. He comes in all the time. He's like always getting records. So this is a great thing. And I copied. I'm following your lead by having a little beer while we're recording. Am I frozen or am I yelling at me? Yeah.
Oh, you're going now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, always have to have coffee or beer, something. Pair with the listening experience. No, thanks a lot, you guys, again, for having me. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. You guys are always showing awesome stuff, and I hope that I bring a little something to the table today. And yeah, it's going to be really fun talking about these records.
So I guess we're showing one record from 5. The records aren't necessarily what at least from my perspective aren't what I would consider the best records, but they're records that meant a lot to me. And when I think of the decade, I sort of think of these records. You know how records tend to sort of become the soundtrack of your life, and these are records that I played and still play, actually. So they would be considered part of the soundtrack of these decades for me.
Sweet. Hold on 1 second. I have to switch over the Wi-Fi I'm on. My dad has all these Wi-Fi set up, so just so nobody says anything that gets cut off while I'm transitioning to another one.
So who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
Go for it, man.
You're the guest, I guess.
Oh, all right. Well, I kind of, I followed the guidelines, and, these aren't necessarily what I think are the greatest albums, but ones that mean a lot to me, or they are, I think interesting, very, and this one, the songs on here were played a lot by like my grandfather, my great grandfather, and that's the Louvin Brothers, Tragic Songs of Life.
Great album.
Oh, it's so good. It was recorded in 1956 by Charles and Ira Louvin, and it just all these songs on here. It's like a pseudo concept album. That's what I love about the 50s is that they were really starting to experiment with this idea of the long player and creating moods. And this album it captures all those sad, downbeat feelings. There's not really a lick of like light on this record. It's all about murder and heartbreak and basically tears in my beer type of music. But what I love about these guys too is that their harmonies inspired so many acts after them. The Everly Brothers were heavily influenced by them. Elvis brought them along on tour, saying they were his favorite gospel group. And basically any close harmony group that you can think of basically owes their heritage to the Louvin brothers. And
Simon and Garfunkel, for
oh,
sure.
for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think that the songs on here are so haunting and chilling, and stuff that you just don't hear today. Like literally hearing a guy talk about how he brought a woman down and laid in a pool of her blood. Like, it's like, you know, they talk about gangster rap. These guys were doing it back in the 50s.
Yeah.
And singing it with like a lilting smile. You know?
And they were gospel. They were Pentecostal gospel singers too.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it. That's really bizarre.
One of them was a preacher, I think. I think he preached for a while.
Yeah. Well, one of the brothers was absolutely insane.
That's the one.
Ira, like went crazy. Tried to like murder his wife. Like apparently, according to her, tried to choke her with a telephone wire, and she shot him like 4 times.
And he lived, right?
Yeah. And he lived only to wrap his car around a tree after driving drunk for like his 4th OWI. It's like, I mean, a really crazy story with these two. But this is just an album that I can't get enough of. And I mean, I wish that they made country records like this again. You just don't hear stuff like this anymore. So I really love this record, and one I'm really happy to have in the collection. And yeah, just my pick for the 50s.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Am I going next?
Yeah, you can go next.
Oh! The fabulous Little Richard.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is an original Specialty Records version. This is the guy that I guess we could say taught the Beatles how to sing.
Yeah.
In fact, the Beatles did Kansas City, his version. I don't know if you guys know the history of that song, but it was actually a Lieber and Stoller song. But Little Richard did it on this album, and he changed all the words. So the Beatles then did his version later on. But if you listen to Paul McCartney and John Lennon, they both owe pretty much everything to this guy's vocal style. Even the oohs, that was a Little Richard thing.
And the screams.
Yeah. So Little Richard basically did 3 sort of monumental rock records. This was the last of the 3. And it actually came out 18 months after he quit Specialty Records. So by the time this came out, he was already basically becoming ordained and had given up rock and roll.
Yeah. Now, you know, it's funny. I'm glad that you brought this record in the fray, because I literally had Here's Little Richard, and I'm like, someone's gonna mention Little Richard, because I get into arguments all the time with people saying he is the most influential rock artist of all time. It's not even a contest.
You can't talk about the 50s without talking about Little Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, Bill Haley, all those guys basically were listening to Little Richard. And of course, 5 years later, the Beatles were doing Little Richard in America.
Right.
I mean, basically, they were singing just like Little Richard had sang in 56, 57, 58. This came out in 58. So the songs that probably most people would know would be She Knows How to Rock, Kansas City, and A Whole Lot of Shakin'. And then Chicken Little Baby is on here too. That's a killer track.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I said, you can't talk about the 50s without at least mentioning Little Richard.
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
I feel actually a little bit outgunned in the 50s department. I was looking through and I was like, I don't really have that much. So I had to go into my dad's old collection. The only records he has are Elvis records. So I bought, yeah. Well, this is, and speaking of like records that are like have like value or meaning to me, like Elvis. I don't know, Ken, if you remember when you first met me, I was probably already in my Beatles phase, but like Elvis, when I was a kid, he was like everything. I wanted to get a guitar just so I could like stand like him, you know. And this is one. It's just like a collection of hits, but it's got, you know, all the classic songs on it. Hound Dog, All Shook Up, Heartbreak Hotel, Jailhouse Rock, you know, on and on and on. And you know, now in hindsight, we look back at him and we're like, yeah, he was basically ripping off like people like Little Richard and like all the R&B artists at the time who just didn't have the same amount of exposure. But he
and rockabilly artists that never made it.
Right. But he was an incredible musician and he was an incredible performer. So it's like it's important to look at him historically. The guy didn't invent rock and roll. Like we should be very honest about that. But he was quite a musician. I went to Graceland 2 summers ago. Obviously not this summer. I didn't go to Graceland, but that was like, it was an experience just to be like in the mythology, because there's like a whole like cult mythology built around this guy that was like really, really intriguing to kind of witness.
So, well, I mean, Jack White worships the guy. He thinks, like, I mean, he has like a huge collection of his memorabilia, has a bunch of the acetates of his Sun 45s. Like, he like worships at the guy's feet.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked up a copy of his first album, and I'm glad Little Richard and Elvis needed to be mentioned too, because they're hugely influential. But I picked up a copy of his self-titled album this year. I had every intention of selling it. Then I put it on the turntable. I was like, wow, this music is amazing. I can't sell this.
Right.
Yeah.
Great choice.
Well, he had great players for sure. Some of the best around. And you said that he didn't invent rock and roll, but he certainly branded it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, Bill Haley probably would have just barely been able to dream about the kind of records that Elvis sold. And, you know, to that point, he was probably the white guy that sold the most records in rock and roll, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the kind of numbers Elvis did, nobody ever dreamed would happen.
Yeah.
Well, even small stores were selling like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boxes of his 45s a week. In the peak.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, rock and roll, maybe it would have been, if not for Elvis, maybe it would have been a fad. Would have just come and gone like surf music. You know, just a quick blip. But thanks to him, it stayed. It had power, and people expanded and grew upon it. So I think you made a great choice there, Garrett.
Thank you.
There's nothing wrong with choosing Elvis.
Yeah.
So great choice.
Yeah, I think we covered the 50s about as well as you can with 3 records.
Covered a lot of a pretty wide range. All right, what's next? What do you got?
Under the 60s.
Again, I'm kind of going, like, I try to pick artists that are a little bit more fringe, not the big names or the big guns, but ones that I think had huge impacts into music later on, and one that doesn't get as much love as she's a country singer, but has this beautiful Baroque pop sound to her voice, and doesn't get as much love as Dusty Springfield, but Bobbie Gentry, the Delta Suite. This record came out in 1968 and was highly influenced by the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. She took huge stringed arrangements and just brought these really lush orchestral songs to life. Was recently actually there was a tribute album done by Mercury Ray, I think, or is it Mercury Rev? I can't remember.
Mercury Rev.
Yes, that's it. And they did a really nice tribute album, but the original to me is fantastic. I mean, this was her second record. She came out with a big hit, Ode to Billy Joe, and a lot of people really enjoyed that. Very mysterious, very sexy, and she just had a lot of balls just going all out on continuing in that sound. And this record did not sell very well according to what they wanted. They wanted Ode to Billy Joe numbers and did not get that. According to Capitol, it was a big flop. So, but to my ears, it sounds incredibly modern, huge influences on cosmic country into the future, and also the Nashville sound. I love this record. It's in I did a ranking of my favorite 100 records, and it's definitely in there. And just how gentle yet powerful she can be in the same album. Really cool record, and one that I find myself returning to time and time again. And the fact that she just disappeared into obscurity in the 70s because she did a large amount of tours in the Atlantic City region, I believe. After that, she was just like, I'm cashing in my chips and I'm done. No one has heard from her since. It's like amazing. Great record by a really fascinating artist.
I gotta check her out. I don't think I've ever heard anything by her, but she sounds like really, really cool.
You will have heard of the song Fancy, made famous by Reba McEntire.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. So she wrote that, and Reba McEntire made it famous. So, but her version's much better.
Well, also from 1968, I stayed away from the obvious stuff, but this is a record that continues to blow my mind. And I've listened to it literally probably 100 times, but Sly and the Family Stone, Dance to the Music, which a lot of people think was actually the first funk record or first modern funk record. It's also pretty psychedelic. You've heard this, right?
What songs are on there? I don't think so.
Well, Dance to the Music, Higher, Ride the Rhythm, Color Me True, Are You Ready, Don't Burn Baby. It's not the hits,
right,
other than Dance to the Music, which you do hear quite a bit, but the production on this record is stellar. I mean, the vocal work is incredible, and it's cutting edge. I mean, there's nothing else like it. It was very, very sophisticated and very funky for that time. So obviously by 68, we had already gone through the Motown period, and wow, it was still going on. The Stax stuff was still happening, but this is a totally different sound. This is like a West Coast psychedelic funk record. So what I've noticed, also the pressings on this are really good. If you can find a yellow label, Epic, that's the pressing to get. And I've got a couple of them. And you know how you read about the earlier pressings are better? That's the case with this. You can find a really early pressing of this. The actual fidelity is just amazing. It's three-dimensional. So,
yeah. No, I completely agree with you. That is a fantastic record. One I still need to put into my collection. I love Sly and the Family Stone. It makes me sad that they kind of get relegated to a second tier funk band in comparison to Funkadelic. But they were just as influential.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what was what was Funkadelic doing in 1968?
Right. They weren't doing this.
Yeah, were they even around? I don't think they were even going yet.
No, I don't think they were. I think that they came out with their first record in 1969.
Yeah, I think my feeling is this inspired Funkadelic,
Mm-hmm.
and it certainly inspired the Red Hot Chili Peppers. If you read any, history with those guys, this is one of the records that comes up over and over and over.
Their names come
I mean,
up.
they say P-Funk because that's the obvious
Right.
kind of line to have, but I've heard them mention this record many times.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, their name comes up like constantly. Like Miles, like was obsessed with Sly and the Family Stone.
Mm-hmm.
He played shows with them. He played the
Right.
Fillmore.
Right.
Can you imagine going to the Fillmore and seeing Sly and the Family Stone with this band and Miles Davis?
Oh my gosh. I think I probably would cry.
Yeah.
I probably I wouldn't see them because tears would be in my eyes. Just so good.
And of course, the next year Woodstock happened and Sly kind of melted down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did he, I think he ended up playing Woodstock, but like a day late or something because he was so wasted. They had to revive him.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of demons. I mean, I love all their output. Like after this too, there's a Riot going on is one of the best funk albums of all time. But yeah, like the album that you just mentioned was definitely, I would say, right up there with like being the vanguard funk album for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. Well, like I said, a lot of people say this is the album that started it. Started modern funk. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent choice.
I'm gonna come up with sort of I think this could be considered somewhat of a bizarre pick, but it really, I think, really exemplifies the '60s sound as a whole, like the late '60s sound. This is we've mentioned this record before. I don't think we've ever taken it on. This is Beck, Bogart, and Appice. I don't know how to pronounce these guys' last names. Appice. Obviously, Jeff Beck. Playing with what are their names? Doesn't have their first names on here. Anyways, this was like a short-lived kind of power trio that I think was, I want to say it was after the Jeff Beck group. I'm not sure. The Jeff Beck group records obviously being the like really iconic early Jeff Beck stuff. I mean, with like just like such an incredible group. This one is not quite as iconic, but it's a surprisingly cool record. I think it gets overlooked a little bit. It's got like a little bit of everything. Like it's got some of that kind of Led Zeppelin kind of sound, but it's also got that kind of Cream thing where they're like playing really hard, but they're singing in falsetto. I think out of all of Jeff Beck's albums, and I've listened to almost all of his albums, this has the most interesting like vocal arrangements, and there's some like really, really beautiful harmonies on this record. And they also have which one is it? One of them is kind of almost like a Motown song, and then of course you have the Jeff Beck rendition of Superstition, which was actually written for him by Stevie Wonder to have as his own song. But then Stevie Wonder, he also recorded it, and the label put his version out first. And so Beck, I think, was a little upset. So then Stevie Wonder wrote him Because We've Ended as Lovers as kind of like an apology for him to record that on Blow by Blow. So it's interesting to hear it in this format because it really is like a hard rock kind of song. But like most people think of it as a funk song because Stevie's just like a really funky musician, but the song itself is actually like kind of balls to the wall, very rockin', and that's what they do on this record. And there's some like ripping guitar work, obviously, and the rhythm section is just super intense. So this isn't my favorite Jeff Beck record, but I think it's worth bringing it up. And I think it's a very cool record, and it kind of encompasses a lot of the sounds in the 60s. Not so much the psychedelic aspect, but the hard rock kind of stuff. So I recommend this one. If you can
Yeah.
find it. I think it's a little harder to find.
Definitely going to have to reevaluate that. I haven't. It's been a while since I've gone through Beck's discography, so I'll definitely give that one another listen.